everybody, welcome to The World This Week. Europe is trying to absorb refugees, but until when? President Obama secured his veto on the Iran deal, but resistance is still very high. China's show of force. And Joe Biden keeps everybody guessing. These are some of the issues we'll touch upon this Sunday. And with me this weekend are Charles Biblizer of I-24 News and Tal Shalev of I-24 News. Charles, let me start with you. The migrant crisis in Europe, it's not an easy issue. It's very difficult. It takes its tolls on European politics, maybe Europe's future.
Well, first and foremost, it's a humanitarian issue, but increasingly it's becoming a big political issue for Europe. So you have Hungary here on the one side, which has been furious and lashing out with Western European countries, in particular Germany. Just over the weekend, yesterday in fact, you had 9,000 migrants cross over from Hungary into Austria en route to Germany. Germany is expected to take some 800,000 migrants in over the next year, but they've done so by breaking the EU rules on accepting asylum seekers. So generally, when migrants come into a country of origin, they have to register there. Now, Hungary has been very tough on these particular migrants. So Germany, what they've done is said, we'll accept these migrants, and basically they're transiting through Europe, which isn't generally the case, and in fact contravenes what the law says.
Tal, this is actually happening next door here, Syria, right? And even in Israel now, they have started a little debate of maybe we should absorb some Syrians as well.
Well, it's amazing, first of all, to see how the power of one image can shock the whole world, the whole continent. It was the image of the 3-year-old Aylan dead on the Turkey beach this week that basically did what hundreds of people who have been drowning on European shores in the past 2 years haven't succeeded to done. And yes, that debate has reached Israel too. It's interesting to see that the discussions and the positions on this cross political lines. We have members of the opposition, the leader of the opposition, Isaac Herzog, calling on the government to accept Syrian refugees. But on the other hand, members of the opposition as well say Israel shouldn't be doing that. There's a question, of course, there's the memory of the Jewish Holocaust and the Jewish history that creates a moral duty for Israel to accept refugees. But on the other hand, we hear many politicians saying, A, this is an enemy country, we are not obliged to accept people from an enemy country, and B, what will this mean about the right of return for Palestinians? So again, we see this problems in Europe creating quite a headache here in Israel too.
Right. Let's talk about the Iran deal, Tal. Looks like Obama won, but the fight is going on.
Well, Obama already scored his major diplomatic victory. The deal will survive Congress. He has much more than 34. He's at 38. And this is much more than he expected, I get, at this point. Nobody expected to be back from Labor Day recess this week and to already have the veto secured. But yes, now the best the opponents of the deal can wish for or can hope for is just to have this vote on a motion of disapproval, which the White House and the administration are very keen and very intent on preventing to begin with. But where does the problem lie? It's not. We have 5 remaining undecided Democrats that are going to be under a lot of pressure in the upcoming week. But also, it's not clear that all of these 38 senators that announced they support the deal will also support a filibuster. So there might definitely be a case where there will be a vote on the floor, and then a majority of Congress will vote to disapprove the bill, and this will create a political and international embarrassment for President Obama. And basically, it will say what opponents of the deal want to say, that the majority of the American people opposes the deal.
Also, the majority of lawmakers so far.
Yeah, I mean, this is something basically, well, the whole issue now that a lot of people are talking about is the legislation that the Corker legislation that created this kind of votes, but only required a 1/3 majority in either Congress, the House, or the Senate in order to make it veto-proof. Basically, when treaties pass through the Senate, it requires a 2/3 majority. So this is something that really is on the frame of mind of a lot of people. But I also wanted just to juxtapose what's going on in Washington, for example, with what's going on in Tehran. So you had the Supreme Leader Khamenei this weekend come out and say that Congress is going to review the Iran deal. So this raised all kinds of speculation about what the Iranian position is. And also, you have the theocracy here in the United States, and you have the theocracy here in Iran, and it was just interesting. It was almost backwards looking.
Always interesting in the Middle East. Charles and Tal, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Straight from the campaign trail in New Hampshire, we are joined by the Republican presidential candidate, Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. Senator, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
How is it going there in New Hampshire?
I'm meeting every man, woman, and child I can find. It's going good. You know, New Hampshire is about getting to know people. I'm making the case that I'm the most qualified to be commander-in-chief. I hope we don't elect a novice commander-in-chief because we're a nation at war, and been to Iraq and Afghanistan 35 times. 33 years in the Air Force, 140 days on the ground as a reservist. I think I understand our military better than anybody else running, and I know how to make it safe. So that's my pitch, and I want to solve problems. I want to work with Democrats to fix Social Security and Medicare and do the big things.
Okay. Well, now that President Obama will be able to veto any objection to the Iran deal in Congress, is this a good time to adjust the Republican position?
Not at all. I think Republicans need to be on the record that we do not believe this is a good deal for America, the region, or Israel. If somebody threatens to cut your throat, the last thing you want to do is buy them a knife. The big mistake Obama made here was separating Iran's behavior from their nuclear program. The $100 billion they're going to get in terms of new money from sanctions relief is going to go into their war machine. They've destabilized 4 Arab countries during the negotiations. They've weakened us throughout the region. They killed Americans with copper-tipped IEDs. They're the largest state sponsor of terrorism. They can buy more weapons under this deal in 5 years, $100 billion of money. They can build a missile in 8 years, and they got a pathway to a bomb. I think this is a lousy deal, and the next president should be able to change it.
So what are the options now?
Okay, number one, I would not give the International Atomic Energy Association any funds until they disclose the secret deal between them and Iran regarding Iranian military facilities. We know the Parchin military facility controlled by the Iranian military was used to test nuclear detonators. Under this side agreement, apparently, the Iranians can inspect themselves. So there's $88 million of funds available to the IAEA. I'm going to withhold funds as chairman of that committee, and I need my colleagues to help me. No money until we get to see this deal. That's one place to start.
Strict enforcement won't be enough to satisfy you?
At the end of the day, the structure of the deal is just is terrible. If they don't cheat in 15 years, they can have unlimited enrichment. They get the money, they get weapons, no conditions on how they use the money. At the end of the day, to expect change from this regime is ridiculous. During the negotiations, there were no moderate behavior coming out of this regime. So I'm going to fight this deal. If I'm president of the United States in 2017, we'll get a better deal. I don't want a war with Iran, but here's what I would say. That we're not going to honor this deal. I'd ask Congress to give me some leverage. Foreign companies cannot use American banks if they do business with Iran. Eventually, people will call, and I'll say, listen, let's get a better deal. If Iran wants a peaceful nuclear power program, they can have it, but they're not going to get a pathway to a bomb, and let's withhold money and weapons until they change their behavior. Tell the Iranians that if you try to break out, we'll stop you. What you're doing now is unleashing, I think, a nuclear arms race over time in the Mideast, unless you get a better deal.
Do you expect, Senator, Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu to keep lobbying strongly against the president on this?
I think the Congress is going to speak here pretty soon. I find it odd that our response to Israel's concern is to promise them more weapons, tell the Arabs we're going to give you a lot more weapons. Well, if it's that good a deal, why do they need more weapons? So at the end of the day, I think the Congress is going to take a vote. I hope the Democrats let us get on the bill and debate it. If they feel like it's a good deal, they ought to be able to vote for it and not hide behind a filibuster. So I believe that this will be a big issue in 2016. I think the American people 2-1 don't like this deal. I think the nominee of our party should articulate how you could get a better deal. And why is it so bad? Because Obama is so weak. The Iranians don't respect him. He drew a red line against Assad. Assad crossed it and nothing happened. The Iranians, the Russians, and the Chinese believe he's all talk. So this is a deal that comes from a position of weakness. If you had a strong American president, you could get a better deal.
Still, you don't find it disturbing, as the administration does, that a foreign leader such as Netanyahu meddles in American politics?
I don't find it a problem at all for one of our allies to call me and tell me what's best for them. I have no problem at all getting input from our friends in Israel. And this is not Bibi, this is every major political party in Israel opposes this deal. You've given the chief antagonist to Israel, Iran, the capability over time to wreak havoc in the region and develop a nuclear weapon. I don't blame Bibi for being upset. At the end of the day, each member of Congress has to vote their conscience on this. I'm going to vote mine, and as to our friends in Israel, if I'm president, we're going to get a better deal so you don't have to live in fear. And my big concern is that over time, the nuclear technology developed by the Iranians makes its way to the United States. It's odd that we tell the United Arab Emirates and South Korea, please don't enrich uranium, when we allow our biggest enemy on the planet to do so. It makes no sense to me.
Meanwhile, let's talk about ISIS. What would you do differently there?
Good question. I would actually destroy them. Have you heard anybody say, when it comes to the war on terror, we win, they lose? Ronald Reagan stood in front of the Berlin Wall and said the Cold War ends by us winning and them losing. That's the way this war has to end. So what would I do to destroy ISIL? I'd get a ground force together in Iraq, more effective than we have today. We need 10,000 American ground forces, not 3,500. That's what the generals who've been successful in the past have told me. So this additional capability, Army aviation battalions flown, helicopters flown by American helicopter pilots. We would have forward air controllers, special forces on the ground in Iraq, trainers at the battalion level so the Iraqi army wouldn't break and run, and we'll get momentum on the ground in Iraq against ISIL. But if you don't go into Syria, there's nobody left there. You'll never fix Iraq. Syria's a launching pad for us, for an attack on us. So you're going to need a regional ground force. We're going to have to be part of that army. We're going to go into Syria and pull the caliphate up by its roots, destroy the headquarters and hold the territory. 8,000 to 10,000 Americans in that equation. If you don't, we're going to get hit here.
Senator Lindsey Graham, thank you very much for joining us from New Hampshire. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
The International Organization for Migrants was established in 1951 with 157 member states. IOM is now obviously focused on the recent crisis in Europe. And with us from Budapest, Hungary, is IOM member Magdalena Kane. Thank you very much for joining us, Magdalena.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, how was your week there during this whole crisis?
Yes, it was pretty busy, as you can imagine. Things have really escalated in Hungary in the last week, and we've been quite busy monitoring what is going on the ground, and it does not seem to slow down at any time.
Who gives these people food, water? We know there's no shelter.
At the moment, this effort is primarily organized by volunteer groups, migration aid. In particular, the situation changes basically from hour to hour.
Well, the big question, of course, is what is the permanent solution? It's hard to imagine that Europe will just open its gates to everybody all the time, right? So what to do?
What Europe is trying, and Hungary also is trying to do, is to stop this flow, but we believe that it cannot really be stopped. It can only be managed, and we can only undertake solutions that would make this transition more safer for people and more beneficial for everyone in the long run.
From your experience, after these refugees enter Germany and Austria, many will follow.
Definitely, the numbers are not abating. The numbers at the moment crossing the Hungarian border are more or less in the region of 3,000 people a day, and they do not show any signs of being less and less. They are very determined to go to Germany in particular. The Czech authorities also have allegedly mentioned that they will let the refugees pass. So it seems like that everything is pointing in the direction that they will be able to eventually go to Germany. Of course, the question remains whether the people who are currently walking to the Hungarian border, will they be allowed to pass through by the Hungarian police? But the numbers are likely to be quite considerable. So the questions of capacity of the Hungarian state to manage this arise on a daily basis.
From your perspective, the scope of this crisis is such that it will change Europe?
Absolutely. We think it's a very big test for Europe, for European values, but also how policies are made and decided upon in Europe. And clearly the set of policies that we have at the moment on asylum do not work, and particularly the Dublin regulation, which defines where refugees are supposed to have their asylum claims heard, doesn't really seem to work in practical terms and has been severely criticized. But I think a lot of it is recognized by the European Commission, and a lot of proposals are coming from Europe that are actually quite groundbreaking. But the question remains whether member states will agree to these proposals, and at the moment there doesn't seem to be a lot of political appetite for that.
Right. Magdalena in Budapest, Hungary, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And this has been The World This Week. We'll see you here next Sunday. Have a great week.